Welcome in to X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network. Ryan Elke, Dan Cahalan in for Anthony Bellino. And brought someone in on the Myers Supercenter guest line, someone I've known for quite a few years now. He is the czar of all Lions. I don't know what to call it. It's John. John, I've never had to say your last name out loud before. I hope it's Maakaron. Is that correct?
Listen, it's okay. You can address me however you want, Ryan. It really is John Maakaron.
Maakaron. See, I thought it was the cookie. I thought it was the cookie. I was like, no, it can't be that.
Listen. You got to get my information right. It's okay. You know, I know I'm just covering the Lions and doing podcasts. It's okay. But now that you've had me, you will now know John Maakaron. I'm looking forward to it, fellas.
See, if we're going to have these disagreements, we might have to go to a Waffle House to settle all these issues that we're having and really just square up and settle it once and for all. And he said you wanted to start with the Waffle House brawl that we were talking about earlier on the show. I need your full all-22 breakdown of the Waffle House brawl.
Yes, absolutely. I woke up and I saw the content that you guys were talking about. I said, let me check out this great video. And, man, I've never been to a Waffle House, and just judging online, I just think that maybe it might be a little bit too rough of a crowd for me to be participating in. But if you're upset and you're going to go at a Waffle House manager, you can't be flopping over the table like that. The lady went in like Robin Ventura going up against Nolan Ryan. You have to go in there guns a-blazing, which is fly off the table and do something. I want to give credit to the manager. She came back like Rambo and was just flinging it. So I looked at it like, you know, after a weekend of relaxing, watching movies, watching combat Rambo movies, I was all into it, man. It was all into it, and everybody was filming and everything. But in the end, I just felt like the manager took it down, and she won the fight 10-8 for sure.
Exactly. I feel like anytime there's another boxer, MMA fighter that drops out last minute, you just call your local Waffle House for a fill-in fighter, and you'll have a show.
Yeah, man, Ryan, it's interesting. We do have to find a way to reconnect the customer and the food service industry, because this is getting tense. Can't go to a Waffle House, get some waffles. My man was just trying to enjoy a waffle, and he had to pull out his phone and tape a brawl.
Hey, if you're an online person, you know all about the Waffle House brawls and what happens. If you're looking for a nice, relaxing waffle, don't go after 9 p.m. Between 9 and 6 a.m., it's Fight Club in there. So
yeah, absolutely. Kind of like the Lions taking a beating from the Panthers.
Exactly. So we'll start right there. Saturday, Christmas Eve. So it's getting ready for the holiday, sitting down, enjoying for the family, and no one enjoyed in Metro Detroit the 3 hours. And it started off quick. It was like a 25-yard run to start for Carolina, and the rushing didn't stop. Just simple. What happened Saturday? Was it just I tried to throw it up as a simple they're due game, like they were due for just a stinker of a performance, or is this just a much bigger issue than maybe I'm trying to not make it?
No, guys, I think that when you look at it, what was most disappointing was heading into the week, you knew the game plan and the defensive strategy was to stop the run. But unfortunately, the Panthers really dove deep into the Lions' film and exposed some of their weaknesses in the run defense. I mean, you look at the first play, and Aiden Hutchinson overcommits, does not set the edge, and it ends up being a huge play. And I just think that you have to also credit the Carolina Panthers, who did their due diligence, understood that, hey, the Lions might have potential issues with tackling with Jeff Okudah, with some of the young safeties, and they went toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions. And I think they took it as a challenge that, hey, this is a football team that everybody's talking about as being the next big thing. We're playing for our head coach. And for whatever reason, and I think it's the most disappointing, the Lions did not answer the bell. They made mistakes. They did not bring the same level of physicality as the Panthers. And what happens when you don't play at the level of a hungry opponent, you take a severe beating. And it hasn't happened over the course of the last 2 months, but the Lions have been prone to some bad defensive performances. And this is what happens when you have a young roster. It's not exactly a linear growth of progression. There are going to be some setbacks. And I think potentially that these last two games could be beneficial for the Lions, having had a game like that.
And we could hammer the defense this in the next 15 minutes. But I want to dive into because we had a few callers mention throughout the week something on the offensive side of Jamison Williams not really being showcased. I don't even know if he got a target on Saturday, and DeAndre Swift seems like kind of falling back in that pecking order of running backs, and his production has been down. Like, what's the make of not seeing much of Jamison Williams and DeAndre Swift's role for the rest of the season?
Yeah, let's start with Jamison Williams. The callers are right. When you have the number 12 overall pick, a player you traded up for, and I know everyone's going to say, let's be patient. He hasn't had that much time. We're not asking for him to be the number one target. We're just saying, look, for a game that you needed to step up offensively and keep up with the Carolina Panthers, you probably could have utilized Jamison Williams more than one lowly target. I mean, everybody who watched the Miami game saw just a simple over-the-middle route to Jalen Waddle that he was able to take to the house. We're not saying that Jamison Williams has to run deep every single play, but you want to incorporate him a little bit more to potentially open up the running game. So I do believe that now it's being addressed. Jamison Williams has kind of done some things online to kind of indicate he wants the ball more. Dan Campbell was asked about it at his weekly presser. Jamison Williams will play more than 11 snaps and be targeted more than once this week at home against the Bears. You just have to. This is a young rookie that has talent, and you want to kind of expedite his progression. With DeAndre Swift, man, it's just since week one, his injury situation has basically precluded him from hitting full gear. There has been a stretch where he played better, but just post games, I think his recovery, his ankle, shoulder situation has made it so that that's not the same player that you saw when he's at his peak. And it's unfortunate, too, because the Lions, when you're struggling and you're in a toe-to-toe matchup with a team like the Panthers, you could have used a DeAndre Swift out of the backfield a little bit more. But unfortunately, his role has just been diminishing here and there because of his injury situation. They're trying to get the best out of him. But right now, you look at it, and that offense goes through Jamal Williams a little bit more and through Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Do you think DeAndre Swift has a future with the Lions, or do you think they might look elsewhere just because of his injury history and with his tenure?
Yeah, it's really tough because you see the potential. I think the Lions tend to be patient with their players, but you look at it and you say, this is a player that has struggled to stay healthy. His stature just, you look at it and you say the running back position is a position you can turn over and still have a relative amount of success. And he was a second-round pick, so his next contract, he's going to be looking to get paid top dollar. I don't see a future with DeAndre Swift. I think you can find a younger talent later rounds that can do what he does. And unfortunately, the situation that you're looking for is you need a player that can stay healthy, that can contribute at a high level. While I think the Lions respect his efforts to try and get out there week in and week out, bottom line, guys, it's a production-based business, and his production just hasn't met what you need out of that position. I think you can get a lot more, and maybe if you can get a younger talent, less expensive in the future, I think the Lions would be willing to part ways with DeAndre Swift.
Would you consider Josh Jacobs with his frustrations with the Raiders?
That's great. I love that you guys think in ways to try and improve the Detroit Lions. But I look at it and I say, how has this team been built? And this free agency period will be very interesting to see where Brad Holmes wants to allocate big dollars to. Does he want to bring in and sign a high-priced free agent? Because I do think Jacobs is going to be coveted across the league if he's going to be available. I don't think Brad Holmes is going to allocate big dollars to that position because you can find a talented individual in the draft. But if you do, I think you're going to have a young, hungry player who could, represent what you're looking for, a player that hasn't had success, a player that's really frustrated playing for the Raiders. I would love to add Jacobs to this offensive line. My goodness, he could definitely produce, but it's going to depend on the dollars and where they're going to allocate it. But I think they could look in the draft. There's a young, talented running back from Texas that potentially could be there in the first round if you want to go that route. But I do think that right now the Lions' defense is where you need to allocate a lot of the free agent dollars.
Well said. Now, coming this week, they host the Chicago Bears, and Bears 3-12. They're slotted right now number 2. draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. And for the Lions playoff scenarios, it's simple. You win, you're still in the hunt. What do the Lions have to do to beat Chicago? I know they're not playing well, but after watching their first game versus Chicago, it took a missed extra point and a very bad Justin Fields interception to win the game. How do they flip it to where they don't need as much luck to beat the Bears this time around?
Well, when you look at the Lions at home, it's a tale of two teams. Jared Goff seems to play at a much higher clip, seems to be much more comfortable. All his statistics are significantly better in terms of QB rating, passing yards, touchdowns at home versus on the road. So I see the offense purring. I think that you're going to see the offense move the football up and down the field. I do believe this Lions team will rebound. They have showed this year that once they face setbacks, that they do come back and have the ability to focus, hyper-focus, and get the job done. Look, the Bears' defense now is without some of their top weapons. They've obviously decided to look to the future. So this Lions team just has to perform at a high level offensively, really mix in and utilize the strengths that they have with Amon-Ra St. Brown. DJ Chark, I think, will get explosive plays. Jamison Williams will be more integrated. And I think the Lions just have to perform offensively and then get back on track defensively. The key, you said it, if you stop Justin Fields, if you can avoid the critical explosive plays on defense, I don't think the Bears offensively are going to keep up with you. I think the Lions could come out real angry and put a hurting on the Chicago Bears, which will make the next game against the Packers all that more important. I don't see the Bears coming into Ford Field New Year's Day and upsetting the Lions.
All right. And looking at the finale of the season, you have the Bears at home, Packers on the road. Let's look into the fortune teller's ball. The Lions go 1-1, miss out on the playoffs. Is this still a successful year 2 for Dan Campbell, or are fans looking at it disappointed because they lost to Green Bay with a playoff chance on the line?
Well, to start the year 1-6 was ultra disappointing. Dan Campbell's regime was on the brink. Everybody had expectations that this team was going to be 7-9, between 7 and 9 victories. Not many would have expected the Lions to make the postseason, but when you had the opportunity to have your future in your own destiny and to fall flat like they did, it wasn't the reason why there was angst that arose following the Panthers game. Not was because it was a loss, but because you got dominated in a game when you had so much on the line. You were not competitive in any sense, which reminds people of many, many past Lions failures. You had an opportunity, and if the Lions don't make the postseason, it will be looked at as a missed opportunity to get some experience for the young players on this roster. But overall, for the Lions and Dan Campbell's regime, big picture-wise, it was a successful season. You got a lot more young players with experience. Your defense is starting to develop players that you can consider to be a core. And to go from where they started this year to where they ended up, winning that many consecutive games, 2 times having 3-game winning streaks for the Detroit Lions is nowhere near an easy feat. So I would look at the season, as a success where it stands right now. But you still would be very, very disappointed if the Lions, because of their, efforts against the Panthers, or if they do fall short against Green Bay on the road in a must-win game, you still would look at it and have to question, okay, when the fire is the hottest, can Dan Campbell get his team to rise above? And that's the next step for a young team is, okay, this football team has showed that they can win football games. They've taken steps. They can make plays. But now when the lights are the brightest and you have to have a must-win scenario to get into the postseason, because that's what's going to happen when you do indeed get to the playoffs. Everything goes up 25% in terms of intensity, focus, and you have to execute. So that'll be the next step for this Detroit Lions team. The future's bright for Dan Campbell.
And we're going to flip gears here. You talked about when, the lights are the brightest and, the fire's the hottest. A coach that didn't rise to the occasion now has rose to the occasion. That's Jim Harbaugh in U of M. They're taking on TCU Saturday. I know you're an MSU guy, but you do cover both U of M and MSU when you have time. What do you think's going to happen Saturday in the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah, Ryan, this is the worst thing for the Michigan State Spartan supporters, seeing the Michigan undefeated, having all the national spotlight. I mean, all the features about J.J. McCarthy and his meditation and how he's preparing for this game, making me sick. But I'll say this, give credit where credit's due. Yes, Jim Harbaugh has his team ready to go. I love this matchup for Michigan because TCU has basically come out and said, we are going to sell out and try and stop the run. So now it's going to be a game where J.J. McCarthy will have to target his receivers and perform at a very high level. I like TCU and the efforts that they bring. I think they're going to come in feeling highly disrespected. They want to continue to cement their legacy. But in the end, I see the game playing out similarly to how Michigan games have played out. It's going to be, an early start. It's going to be, two teams looking to feel each other out. But then Michigan's offensive line, I think, will just wear out TCU towards the third and fourth quarter, and then Michigan will end up pulling away. It's going to be a good game in the first half, and then I think Michigan, in their efforts now to want to advance past the first game of the playoff, I do think that they're going to advance, and I think they'll probably win by 7 points here, 7 to 10 points in a very good game. TCU is not going to, fall by the wayside. I think that they're going to rise to the occasion and really want to play at a high level because remember that with TCU, many believe, they're just one of those kind of teams that's lesser than, that don't belong in the same class as Michigan. And those kind of games always produce great moments where maybe even TCU takes a lead in the first half. They got a high caliber defense and a quarterback that many people are talking about. So it's going to be a fun New Year's Eve contest, but Michigan should advance from the New Year's Eve game.
And if you watched any TCU game, the game's not over until it hits zeros on the clock. No matter what the deficit, TCU's always in it. John, Dan, and I want to thank you for joining us. It's John Maakaron from All Lions Sports Illustrated. Go find his work. A lot of great pumps out. You pump out the most content, I think, on the Lions around. So just go check it out. It's Twitter, Detroit Sports Podcast. And, John, we know each other for years. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Have me on sooner. I'm going to come up there like a pissed off Waffle House customer.
All right. Sounds good.
Nice.
Bye, guys.
Bye. There, you had a Michigan State guy predicting Michigan to just dominate second half. There you go. You heard it on the show. I didn't have to say it.
It wasn't Ryan.
I didn't have to say it.
It was a Michigan State fan.
It was a Michigan State guy saying it, and I didn't have to. So there we go. Great stuff from John right there.